All right, welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Lots to talk about. Actually, not as much to talk about. But the House impeached Mayorkas. I want to talk about that. We lost New York District 3, that congressional race. So that's pretty exciting. And also, Tony Bobulinski speaks again. I am so happy they didn't kill that guy. And I hate to say it, but I was so scared. I was so fearful for that guy. Remember back in the day when Tucker Carlson interviewed Tony Bobulinski to talk about Biden's corruption and link Joe Biden to Hunter Biden and how he acted as a mediator between Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. And Joe Biden was known as the big guy. That's where we first got that name from, if I recall correctly, from Tony Bobulinski. But anyway, let's go ahead and start with that story and make sure there's no breaking news that is hitting right now, because I want to make sure that you are well informed, even though this is just a quick hit, if you will. Okay, Schweitzer puts his biggest book ever. Peter Schweitzer reveals how China kills Americans and we're letting them do it. Wow. Well, I just told you about the Indian tribe, so that's out. Travis Kelce goes Hollywood, produces star-studded film funded by Inflation Reduction Act. Wow, that's pretty impressive. New York in scandalous. I mean, big lefty. I wish these people would just stick to sports, but it is what it is. All right, let me just get to the bigger topics of today so that my head doesn't explode, and same with Gabe, I'm sure. All right, so here's the deal. Let me talk about, I think, actually, we have some video, Gabe. Let's just run the video. I'll respond to the video real quick. I'll get into these three topics. Start with Alejandro Mayorkas. Why not? Alejandro Mayorkas was impeached the first time since a cabinet member has impeached in nearly 150 years. So let's get into the details of that. Go ahead and roll the video, Gabe. We'll tackle that one first.
On this vote, the yeas are 214 and the nays are 213. The resolution is adopted.
All right, so you just heard the video. You heard the audio. For those of you that are listening through audio, House impeaches Mayorkas over his handling of the U.S.-Mexico border. However, I do agree, and you've seen some headlines already, the same needs to be done with Joe Biden. I, for one, do believe that Joe Biden, I don't care what the special counsel says about his mental condition. I don't think you give a criminal an out. If he was, of sound mind when he was committing those crimes, he should go to trial. And if you get a sympathetic jury, you get a sympathetic jury. But in my opinion, Joe Biden should have gone to trial and he should be impeached. In my opinion, selling off our secrets and all that kind of good stuff, leaving secrets and out in his garage for his crackhead son to get a hold of and share and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely insane. So hat tip to Breitbart. So Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas Alejandro was impeached by the House Tuesday. It was a narrow vote, 214 to 213. He's become the first cabinet official to be impeached in almost a half a century. William Belknap, he's the Secretary of War to President Ulysses S. Grant, was impeached by the House in 1876. So that was the last time that happened. Despite resigning before the vote, Belknap was acquitted by the Senate, an outcome sure to be repeated if the Senate does not procedurally kill Mayorkas' impeachment. All right, so this is the deal, and I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen, but Mayorkas could survive this impeachment. The House has to impeach him, but the Senate has the final say. They determine whether or not they're going to keep this impeachment, if you will, in place and totally kick him out of office. Nevertheless, I do think it was a good score for the Republican Party. I think it's one that they needed. For those of you that don't know, and I wasn't sure about this myself, but I've shared this since, I spoke to a gentleman that understands how well equipped Alejandro Mayorkas is as a lawyer in navigating throughout these federal government bureaucracies. And they say, and that particular person, he works for the Heritage Foundation, I interviewed him on SNC Tonight last week, said, no, you guys, you don't understand how skilled of a lawyer this guy is. He knows the loopholes. He understands the loopholes. So just getting someone else in may not be as bad as Mayorkas. Yeah, they may be crazier. They may be even more left wing. But this guy knows how to navigate through the system. So he convinced me that even if they get someone else in, unless it's some type of skilled attorney like Mayorkas, this is a win. All right, so I'm just glad to hear it. Here's what Tom Emmer had to say, Republican from Minnesota. He's the majority whip. Bit of a moderate, but nonetheless, he said this. Secretary Mayorkas' willful refusal to enforce federal law created an unprecedented crisis at our southern border and left innocent Americans to pay the price. They need to say what price. They need to say what price. I mean, for God's sakes, our schools are jam-packed now. You have, where did I see this? You have, I saw a headline. Pro-sanctuary city, New York City Mayor Eric Adams says city is out of room. People will be sleeping on the streets. This is what Republicans need to say. I don't understand why these fools can't communicate. Like, communicate with real people. For God's sakes, man. It just drives me batty. All right. And remember, last week this vote failed because Republicans thought they had the vote. You had three turncoats: Representative Ken Buck of Colorado, Tom McClintock, and Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin, that decided not to vote against the impeachment or for the impeachment last week. They did the same yesterday, but Steve Scalise, who's battling cancer, was back in town, so he was able to give that vote. So that's why you have a one vote majority, and that's why Mayorkas is officially impeached. But now the Senate has the final say. Democrats run the Senate, but here's what they have to. This is why I don't know if this is final. All right, Democrats run the Senate, but if they don't impeach Mayorkas and they don't get this border problem under control, that's a noose that they're going to be hanging around their necks for their own election cycle. And as you guys know, immigration is the biggest deal with voters right now. That's the number one issue. They're concerned about the illegal immigration. All right, so moving on from that. Now here's Tony Bobulinski. So Tony Bobulinski, hat tip to Daily Wire, is a former business associate of Hunter Biden, and he told congressional investigators yesterday that Joe Biden was an quote-unquote enabler of his family members' foreign dealings that granted sway over the U.S. government. Now, for those of us that are conservative and watched Tucker Carlson on Fox back in the day, we already knew this, but a lot of new people are going to be finding this information out. A lot of people may not have been paying attention to politics at the time. So 2 House committees received testimony from Bobulinski. He's a Navy veteran, by the way, and he's also a successful entrepreneur now, but a Navy veteran who came forward with evidence about alleged Biden family corruption just 2 weeks before the 2020 presidential election as one of many witnesses in an ongoing impeachment investigation. Now, the Biden's family, Bobulinski said in his opening statement, the Biden family's foreign influence peddling operation from China to Ukraine and elsewhere sold out to foreign actors who were seeking to gain influence and access to Joe Biden and the United States government. He went on to say Joe Biden was more than a participant in and beneficiary of his family's business. He was an enabler, despite being buffered by a complex scheme to maintain plausible deniability, quote unquote. And that's why he had his son involved. That's why he had his brother involved in this stuff, just plausible deniability. They were out doing their own thing, had nothing to do with Joe Biden being, the VP, nothing to do with Joe Biden being a senator. They were just doing their own thing. Bobulinski also said the only reason any of these international business transactions took place, with tens of millions of dollars flowing directly to the Biden family, was because Joe Biden was in high office. The Biden family business was Joe Biden, period. And we all know this to be true. Look at Hunter Biden. What a crackhead that is. Give me a break. No one in their right mind is going to give Hunter Biden a buttload of money. For nothing. Well, for his business acumen? Are you kidding me? Let's not be crazy. In his statement as well, opening statement, Bobulinski detailed other foreign business dealings that allegedly involved the Biden family. And he said that he met Joe Biden in 2017 to discuss deals, claimed he was defrauded by the Biden family, and suggested that the law enforcement has been singularly unwilling to speak with him. In one business deal they did, he was owed millions of dollars from that deal. Basically, Hunter Biden and the Bidens led him to believe that deal fell apart. And I can't remember what happened where he realized the deal went through. They just cut him out of it. They just did him dirty. Carl, well, he's just getting back at him. Okay, so what? So what? They're in the wrong. Bobulinski seems to be one of this according to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Bobulinski seems to be the one man Democrats are most afraid of, she says, yelling and sputtering politically charged questions, yet having no concern about the president of the United States and his son's business deals with the CCP. Democrats are already trying to create their cover-up and narrative on the deposition after the facts. It will be a desperate attempt at lying again for the Bidens, she writes. And then you had Representative Robert Garcia that basically argued the opposite and said that Tony Bobulinski is a joke. He provided no direct evidence, and it is clear that he did provide direct evidence behind closed doors, but they didn't go into details. But he provided specific details. But when these people come out of these rooms, they can just lie. And honestly, that's what troubles me about our they can just lie. The same rules don't apply to them. It drives me absolutely insane. All right, so we got Mayorkas being impeached. We got the story about Tony Bobulinski. Let's go to New York District 3. And by the way, I broke this. I didn't break it, but it broke in the other. Earlier, I mentioned how CBS has laid off Catherine Herridge right after she reported on the Biden docs. So, guys, you have to realize the media is in on it, all right? They want Biden. These are a bunch of leftists in a lot of these media organizations, whether it's CBS, NBC, ABC, all of these mainstream organizations are insane, all right? They are leftists. It's as simple as that. Remember, Biden has refused to take questions during the White House after he attacked Trump. He's also refused to take a cognitive exam for his annual physical exam as part of his annual physical exam. Why would he do that? Why would he do that unless Special Counsel Robert Hur's report was true, that he's basically a vegetable walking? And he is, and we all know it. I don't doubt that there's times when he's heavily medicated, that he's lucid for a period of time, and maybe they get him to sign something or they talk to him briefly. I don't doubt that those times exist. It's just that they're quickly forgotten by him. All right. I mean, it's insane. It's so obvious that the guy has dementia. I'm tired of the gaslighting. Now, getting on to New York District 3. That was Representative George Santos' seat. George Santos was kicked out of office. It was one of the dumbest moves I've ever seen Republicans make. And when we have such a small and thin majority, and listen, I'm not saying that I'm a fan of Santos, and I'm not saying I hate him either. I was involved in X Spaces with him, participated in X Spaces with a colleague of mine, David Pollock. And listen, man, a nice guy, willing to answer just about any question. Willing to talk to and listen to voters and even take heat from voters. So in that sense, he was a good representative. But there were times where I was listening and I was like, that's just BS. You know what I'm saying? But at least he was willing to come on and be a real person and talk with people. And I think he endeared himself to a lot. Actually, I know he did, to a lot of the listeners on X. I did too. I'll end up liking the guy. I was like, man, listen, I know this guy needs Jesus. I know the guy is messed up. I don't know all the details and all that kind of stuff. But at least you can talk to the guy, right? And so that was pretty cool. But he got kicked out. There were a couple of New York Republicans that had their nose up in the air, and they wanted him out. Oh, he's this, he's that. And so they managed to kick him out. But now you have this race that occurred last night with this guy, Tom Suozzi, who apparently was in Congress before, who held that seat before, but he ran for governor in New York. He ran in the primary, so he had to abandon his seat against Kathy Hochul, and he lost that race. So he jumped back in to regain his old seat that George Santos won. But yesterday he won it, 59 points to 41 points. That was a butt kicking. That is a butt kicking by a seat that George Santos won. I don't remember by the exact numbers, but George Santos reasonably for that area won that seat. And I don't want to say it was a runaway, but from what I remember, it wasn't that bad. Now, I mean, it wasn't a runaway, but it wasn't narrow either. It was a definitive victory. And so anyway, that's that. But two of his colleagues in New York that also won seats in I guess blue areas turned red or whatever. They fought hard to make sure that he was kicked out of Congress. And unfortunately, Kevin McCarthy was gone. Listen, guys, can we just look at results now? I mean, I have no animus towards Speaker Mike Johnson, but what's the difference? What's the difference? You know what I'm saying? I love what the initial 20 did to get concessions from Speaker Kevin McCarthy. And then you have the Gang of Eight that came back. And I still like the vast majority of the Gang of Eight, with the exception of Nancy Mace. I think she's just an establishment attention getter. All right. She doesn't know. She sticks her finger up in the wind. That's how I feel about Nancy Mace. Not a fan of hers. All right. But otherwise, I like the vast majority of congressmen, including Matt Gaetz, that were involved in that. I think it was just the wrong move at the wrong time. I think Representative Chip Roy, Representative Byron Donalds had a better plan. They were getting concessions, the concessions they wanted from McCarthy. And I guess Gaetz wanted to expedite the process. And also there was some vitriol between the two. But nonetheless, they kick out Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy is unable to keep the House in order, because I think he would have kept them in line, as opposed to Speaker Mike Johnson coming in, as a fresh face and having to deal with all of this stuff for the first time, where Kevin McCarthy had been, this is all he wanted, was to be speaker, right? And so even though I'm not a huge fan of Kevin McCarthy, in my opinion, he was more effective from what we're seeing now than Speaker Mike Johnson was. And I think if Kevin McCarthy were in, we wouldn't have seen the debacle of Alejandro Mayorkas lasting over an additional week in his position, because he would have made sure that all of the votes were counted. All right. And so it's just stuff like that that's very important. So we kick Santos off out of office, and now we have to worry about, and now we lose a special election. So the House lead, the Republican lead in the House, or the number of seats that they have over the Democrats it's even narrower now. Just absolutely asinine. Now, listen, I understand that Santos is being charged with a lot of stuff, or has been charged with a lot of federal crimes. He has not been convicted as of yet. And since Senator Bob Menendez is still in office, why not Santos? Just a huge mistake by Republicans, in my opinion. Let the voters sound off. They elected him, good or bad, mistakes or not, they elected him. Let them sound off. It's as simple as that. Let them have the final say. Meanwhile, instead of focusing on him, we just focus on winning wins inside of the House. Now, here's something else you have to be concerned about. And let's do this real quick. Let's go ahead and run this video. Gabe, I don't know what, I'm just talking and yapping. We'll go ahead and play this. This is in 2021 alone, the FBI used spies to spy on the American people.
Mr. Chairman, as I toured the district, the number one concern, or at least one of the top concerns, was the weaponization of government against American citizens. And so as we start addressing these FISA issues, this has got to be a priority. And, it's the Fourth Amendment's clear. Americans are protected from unreasonable searches and seizures without a warrant. But the FBI has used FISA 702, which is meant for gathering intel on foreign nationals, hundreds of thousands of times, to spy on American citizens without a warrant. Instead of focusing outwardly on America's enemies, they are focusing inwardly on the American people. In 2021 alone, the FBI used FISA 702 300,000 times to spy on American citizens, including Biden's political opponents. In 2020, the Department of Justice admitted warrants they used to spy on Trump's campaign lacked probable cause. Y'all remember how all that started, right? Clapper briefed Obama in the White House with Biden, then the VP, and Loretta Lynch sitting in the room, and said, hey, just so you guys know, heads up, the DNC and the Clinton camp are working on this Russian collusion narrative. Comey leaves the room, and within a few short hours, opened an investigation in which he began to spy on the Trump campaign with General Flynn and the rest. The abuse of power between the FBI and how they used that against political opponents. And yet, that same FBI who offered Christopher Steele $1 million to verify anything in the dossier turned around and gave Twitter $3 million to scrub the Hunter Biden laptop story in the following election. Why would we, as Congress, authorize an NDAA, which attaches this FISA reauthorization, to spy on American citizens in an election year, certainly with an embattled political campaign going on for both sides, and we know they spied on Trump. So it just does not make sense. I think our job up here, most of us know, is to protect your liberty, folks. This was bipartisan out of the judiciary. When we brought this bill out, both sides saw the dangers that we were facing as American citizens. Our job is to protect your liberty. We got to hold the line, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to Representative Norman.
All right. So listen, the left are going to do anything, whatever it takes to win. And they're going to keep doing this. The deep state they're part of the Democrat Party, right? They're communists, right? Their leaders are fascists. All right. They're totalitarians. They won one party rule inside of the United States, and that includes everyone they brainwash in college that goes on to work in these bureaucracies, whether it's the FBI, CIA, so on, et cetera. That's what's happening. All right. Here's another headline. U.S. intelligence agencies mobilize foreign partners to spy on Trump's 2016 campaign. Okay, so that's basically just what we watch. But I wanted to bring that story back and touch on this George Santos race, not the George Santos race, but the New York District 3 race that we just lost to Democrats because we were dumb enough to expel George Santos from Congress. But here's what the left wants to do. And here's what the left is doing, and they're succeeding. The news media, it's overwhelming Trump and Biden. So if they can keep you focused on these national races, you're not going to pay attention to these state races that we need to win as well, or these local races that we need to win as well. And guys, and I'm just as guilty of it, so I got to make sure that I do it. This morning, I went ahead and Googled. I wanted to make sure there was no special elections coming up in my district. I Googled it. I wanted to make sure, that I had the dates right for the primary coming up, because I want to be able to vote in the primary, obviously not just on the presidential level, but whatever other candidates are on the under ticket. So I just wanted to make sure I got the dates right. I challenge you to do the same. Don't get so caught up on the national media that you forget to take care of your home. And when I say your home, I mean your state, I mean your city, I mean your county, your city, local municipalities. Don't forget that stuff too. The left wants to keep you distracted with all these big stories: Trump, Biden, Trump, Biden, Trump, 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 Biden, Biden, Biden. You know what I'm saying? And then we forget that we need to show up to races like New York District 3, and we just don't have the ground game to do so. And so you had Republican Mazie Pillup, who lost and just slaughtered by Tom Suozzi. And apparently there were efforts for, Republicans. There were some efforts on the ground. Republicans even had a last minute snowstorm, and there were snow plowers there and all that. But a lot of people simply didn't show up. So in these special elections, Republicans aren't showing up for whatever reason. And I think in part we're paying so much attention to the national elections that we're not doing the ground game work that we need in those local elections. And then I still believe that many Republicans are shell shocked from 2020 and 2022. Because remember, there was a big turnout in 2022, numbers wise, just in all the right places. So we didn't fare as good as we liked, or as good as we hoped. Last video, and we'll close this out. This is the Denver Mayor Mike Johnson announces cuts in services at the DMV and Park and Recs to free up more resources for illegals. Wow.
Thank you all so much for being here this morning. I'm here to talk a little bit about the devastating impact of the failure of Republican leadership in Congress this week to pass comprehensive immigration change, and the impact that will have on both city budgets and on services that we can provide for newcomers in the city. The second is we will start to have to greenlight a set of hard decisions about budget reductions across the city to meet those costs that we know will continue to arrive. We want to talk about two of those today. While they're the first steps, they unfortunately will not be the last and may not be the hardest. This is a plan for shared sacrifice. And so in terms of our first step on city cuts, we are announcing today we will make some changes both to our services at DMV and to our services on Parks and Rec.
Everything that's happening, all the pain that you're feeling in your county, is because of Republicans. The Republicans and their opposition to a foreign aid bill that has nothing to do with border security. I think that's what he was referencing. All right, so what a complete lie. But this is what they do. They are liars. It is what they do. They lie. And now there's a narrative out that Biden can't. Biden, when he came into office, he revoked all of the executive orders regarding the border that Trump had put in place, remain in Mexico, so on, etc. All right. And so now apparently he can't change that unless there's legislation. That's a bold-faced lie. If you can sit there and cancel executive orders, you can rewrite those same executive orders that kept immigration stable or illegal immigration down, the numbers down. So just complete and utter liars. It is their fault that the border is wide open. I think people know that. I don't think they'll get away with it from the most part, but you know the old adage, you say it, you lie long enough. I forget exactly how it goes, but you tell a lie long enough, people are going to believe it. That's just the way that it works. Anyway, guys, also please subscribe to my podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. All right, your Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Please follow me on all things social media at The Carl Jackson Show. We would certainly appreciate that. Mike Lindell, My Pillow. If you want deals, listen, you're struggling everywhere else to get, whatever it may be, any pleasantries that you want. To make your life a little more comfortable, to make your life a little better. Things are expensive as all get out. But if you're going to be buying materials anyway, if you're going to be buying products anyway, for your home or to help you get a good night's rest or anything like that, bedding material, please go to mypillow.com. MyPillow 2.0, Giza Dream Sheets, mattress toppers, bathrobes, towels, footwear, you name it, all on sale right now. MyPillow.com, promo code CARL, C-A-R-L. Just click on the radio podcast square at the top of the page or give them a call, 800-858-0263. Again, that number is 800-858-0263. All right, guys, I appreciate you tuning in today. And until next time, don't grow worried, doing good, and God bless you.